The morning sunlight pours through the courthouse's tall windows, stretching across the polished wooden floor. The air is a mixture of coffee, paper, and tension in a thick, invisible current that wraps around each person in that room. Kody Brown sat, rigid, at the defendant's table, with his hands clasped together in a tight grip. His eyes flashed around the room, momentarily locking on to each of his wives, Robyn, Christine, Janelle, and Meri. Each face holds its own story of outrage, pain, disbelieving horror, and silent calculation. Today isn't just a day in court. It was a reckoning. The collision of secrets and emotions simmering beneath the surface for years. The imposing figure behind the bench leaned forward. Eyes which cut through any lies like a knife, pounded the gavel. "Court is now in session," he announced. The sound reverberated off the marble walls, and for a moment, even the murmurs of the media seemed to pause. The silence was deafening. Cameras clicked, capturing not just images, but history. The unraveling of a family once thought unshakable. Robyn edges forward, her fingers clasping and unclasping nervously on the edge of her legal documents. Her mind races. Could this be the proof of everything I've suspected? Across the room, Christine sits motionlessly, jaw clenched, defiance flashing in her eyes. She doesn't want to appear weak, while a storm of emotions churns in the depths of her being. Janelle gazes down, lost in her thoughts, loyal but afraid. Meri's eyes gleam with the threat of tears, yet she refuses to let them fall. Each wife is tangled in her feelings, so carefully masking her vulnerability, while exposing subtle cracks. The prosecutor stands up, his measured steps echoing off the cold floor of the courtroom. "Your Honor, we are here today to discuss some very serious allegations of financial and personal misconduct that have jeopardized the interests of this family and the children born to them," he begins, his voice crisp, cutting. Kody shifts uneasily. He knows this isn't about getting fined or even jailed. This is about perception, legacy, every secret he has kept behind closed doors. A witness is called, a former family assistant, whose loyalty has recently been called into question. Her hands shake as she approaches the stand, clutching notes she has rehearsed for days. I saw documents, emails, and transfers that I shouldn't have," she says in a shaky voice. The courtroom leans in, famished for details. Each disclosure, every whispered truth, strikes through the flimsy veil of dignity that the Brown family had desperately hoped to uphold. Evidence starts to emerge, the slow, deliberate weaving of a case. Emails disclose bank transfers not recorded in the books. Text messages allude to secret alliances. Financial statements reveal a pattern of hidden decisions made without the wives' involvement. Christine's hand clenches into a fist under the table. Her mind quickens with recollections of nights of muffled arguments, of silent suspicions she could never prove. Robyn shifts uncomfortably, her heart racing. Was I too trusting? She wonders. Janelle's eyes drop to the floor. She fights to suppress her emotions, frightened of giving away her own internal turmoil. Meri's lips quiver just a little, barely perceptible, the tension that has taken hold and threatens to dismantle her composure. Kody rises to speak, trying to keep a calm composure, but even his voice betrays him at times. Slight cracks, subtle pauses, a hesitation that hasn't gone unnoticed by the court or the wives. "Your Honor, these allegations are misleading," he says in measured words. "There are explanations for every document, every action that's been questioned here today." The prosecutor narrows his eyes, ready to pounce on inconsistency, while the judge's sharp gaze seems to pierce through Kody, demanding truth and accountability. The energy is electric in the courtroom. Each revelation seems to weigh more than the last. Every word spoken is laced with unspoken consequences. Robyn bites her lip and keeps her gaze on Kody. Christine, leaning slightly forward, is barely able to keep a reaction from filtering onto her face. Janelle shifts uncomfortably, but keeps her attention. Meri closes her eyes a moment, taking a deep breath as if to steel herself against the next blow. Every subtle gesture tells a story, each as significant as the words being said aloud. A second witness comes forth, a former neighbor. Having heard family disputes that exposed hidden tensions carefully guarded from the public eye. She talks about private arguments, minor but important quarrels, showing fissures in what had been considered a solid trust between Kody and his wives. Her words drew a picture of not just financial missteps, but of emotional betrayals, unspoken resentment, and fragile alliances ready to collapse. And from the prosecution presents its evidence one tidbit at a time. Emails containing vague wording that suggest secret spending, receipts for purchases the wives never knew existed, and general notes implying manipulation behind the scenes. Each tidbit keeps adding fuel to the fire until tension radiates across the room. Christine's face begins to harden. Her expression is a mixture of anger and hurt on her face. Robyn fidgets, divided between justice and lingering love. Janelle's eyes widen in apprehension, while Meri's throat tightens as she works to process the revelations. Kody rises again, this time more defensive. His tone is calm but strained, measured but heavy with the weight of exposure. I did not intend to deceive anyone, he says. Every decision I made was for the family's stability. His words, though seemingly innocent, are dissected by the sharp eyes of the court, interpreted through a lens of skepticism. Every movement, every pause, every glance carries meaning. The wives observe closely, reading intentions and unspoken admissions. The room seems to pulse with unspoken tension, a living entity that presses down on everyone present. As the session draws to a close, the judge calls a recess. The room collectively exhales, the tension eases, leaving its residue of anxiety in the air. The wives exchange glances, silent questions hanging in the air. Who can they trust? Who has been telling the truth? And who will buckle under the weight of the truth when the courtroom resumes? Robyn leans back, and a deep breath escapes her lips. Christine stays rigid, eyes fixed on Kody. Janelle closes her notebook. She can't concentrate. Meri's hands shake just a little on her lap. The air is bright and warm outside the courtroom, but inside, emotions are stormy and unabated. The first session has only begun to unwind the web of secrets that has long bound and threatened to tear apart the Brown family. The doors open with a creak once more, allowing sunlight onto the floor as the crowd rushes to their seats, including spectators and media. Kody Brown adjusts his tie, though the movement feels stiff, almost mechanical. The weight of yesterday's revelations still presses down on him, like an invisible hand. He looks at his wives, who are all lost in their own thoughts. Robyn clutching her folder tightly, Christine with cold, calculating eyes, Janelle nervously tapping fingers against her knee, and Meri silently practicing the words she hopes won't spill from her lips. The truth that might further tear the family apart today. The judge enters. Her expression is stern but calm. Let's continue where we left off, she says, her voice slicing through the low hum of whispers. Next witness. A woman in her early 40s gets up from the gallery, the family's former accountant. Her hands shake slightly as she makes her way to the stand with a stack of files, extremely well organized, clutched tightly in her hands. She looks directly at the judge. I have to tell the truth about financial discrepancies I have found, she starts, her voice quivering, though strengthening with each word. The courtroom leans forward, every ear straining to catch her testimony. She lays out a series of emails, bank statements, and internal memos that point to transactions made without the knowledge of the wives. Some are subtle, a transfer here, an unexplained expense there, but others are blatant. Payments to unknown accounts, unauthorized withdrawals, and notes suggesting that certain purchases were deliberately concealed. With each revelation, the room grows tense, and Kody shifts uncomfortably in his chair, his calm facade starting to crack. Her lips pressed tightly together. The betrayal she suspected for years now takes physical form in the spreadsheets and receipts. Her mind's eye flickers to memories of quiet arguments over missing money, late-night confrontations, and this nagging feeling that Kody was keeping a side of the family, even from her. Her fingers curl into fists under the table. I knew something was off, but this is beyond anything I imagined. Robyn leans forward, a tide of conflicting emotions rushing over her. She desires justice, yet a part of her clings to loyalty, to the man with whom she is still in love, despite everything. How could he hide so much from me, she wonders. The courtroom closes in on her, the air thick with tension. Janelle, normally composed, barely breathes, her eyes darting to every movement as her mind speeds with questions. Meri's face pales, her tears ready to spill, as the accountant details expenditures tied directly to family decisions that were never discussed, never agreed upon. The prosecutor leans forward, his voice sharp, deliberate. "Ms. Thompson," he says, addressing the accountant, "are you confident these transactions were conducted without full disclosure to the Brown family's spouses?" "Yes," she says, the tremble in her voice giving way to certainty. "I have double-checked every statement, every memo. These actions were intentional and concealed." The room reacts subtly but viscerally. A shift in the air, a collective intake of breath. Kody's jaw tightens, a muscle twitching in the corner of his face. He stands abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Your Honor, I." "Sit," says the judge, her tone final. "We will proceed without any interruption. We shall listen to statements and weigh testimonies carefully." The tension mounts as she resumes questioning, taking the witness through a number of emails that indicate alliances had formed in the family. Alliances that may have been calculated to exclude some of the wives. Whispers ripple through the gallery. The wives react differently. Christine's eyes blaze with indignation. Robyn swallows hard to hold back tears. Janelle's face flushes with panic, and Meri's hands shake with the weight of pent-up anger. There is a moment's silence as the witness produces a confidential document. She hands it to the prosecutor, who looks through it and then turns to the judge. "This," he says, "is evidence that some decisions were made by one wife in concert with Kody, without informing the others, potentially undermining trust and legal transparency." The camera pans across the wives. Robyn's face tightens in shock. Her eyes search Kody's, seeking explanations she fears she may never get. Christine's face hardens into something cold, calculated. She is ready to fight for the truth, whatever that may be, whatever that may cost. Janelle leans back, her mind racing through every private conversation, every subtle slight, every whispered reassurance, now revealed as a potential lie. Meri's lips quiver, eyes glistening with anger and heartbreak. Kody rises, trying to defend himself. But the words falter as the evidence mounts up. "Your Honor, these documents," he says, voice strained. But Christine cuts in sharply. He doesn't get to explain away years of deception. The room's atmosphere amplifies. Voices murmur, cameras flash, and tension coils like a spring ready to snap. The wives' emotions evolve from restrained anger to palpable fury, each silently questioning not only Kody's actions, but also their own judgment in trusting him. The court takes a short recess, and whispers of speculation fill the room. Lawyers huddle, reporters scribble furiously, and the wives step into the hallway. Robyn leans against the cold wall, head bowed, trying to steady her racing heart. Janelle paces, replaying every argument, every decision, wondering if she could have prevented the spiraling chaos. Christine stands rigid, arms crossed, eyes scanning the courthouse with calculated precision. Meri leans against a pillar, silent, letting the gravity of the situation press against her chest. As they return, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifts. The next witness, a former family friend, takes the stand to testify against the Browns, having had the chance to observe the Browns' private interactions over the years. The testimony starts with small details, whispered arguments, secretive meetings, unexplained absences. But under continued questioning, the witness exposes something much more explosive, a moment when Kody and one wife might have conspired to intentionally exclude others from key financial and personal decisions. The courtroom reacts in an instant. Gasps, whispered exclamations, and subtle shifts in posture ripple through the room. Robyn stares, her mind not fully grasping the degree of betrayal. Christine's eyes flash, her fingers tightening on the edge of her seat. Janelle's stomach churns uncomfortably, her insides twisting. Meri's hands shake, attempting to anchor herself. Even the air hums with tension, each heartbeat magnified in silent anticipation of what will happen next. Kody stands again, his voice measured and shaking slightly. "Your Honor, these accounts are misleading. The context counts. Context will be taken into consideration." The judge responds evenly, her eyes steady. The court will define intent and culpability based on testimony provided. The witness continues, relating personal interactions that expose a fragile and constantly shifting network of alliances. The wives glance at each other, suspicion and hurt reflected in every gaze. Robyn's throat tightens. Christine's jaw clenches. Janelle bites her lip. Meri blinks rapidly, trying to suppress emotion. It leads further into the realm of hidden emails and text messages, revealing the depth of secrecy over the years. Some of the conversations suggest emotional manipulation, subtle pressure, and unspoken coercion, a portrait of a family balancing on the edge of collapse. The wives' faces reflect the storm within, disbelief, sorrow, rage, and the painful recognition that their world has been more fragile than they imagined. The session nears its tense conclusion. The judge goes over documents, instructs witnesses to step down, and motions toward a brief recess. Kody slumps slightly in his chair, exhausted but guarded. The wives exchange silent, loaded glances, unspoken questions hanging thickly in the air. Whom can they trust? What secrets remain buried? And when the next session begins, What truths will finally surface? The doors shut behind the last spectator, and the courtroom feels heavier than ever. The air was thick, electric, charged with anticipation, with emotion tightly contained. Kody Brown sat at the defendant's table, shoulders tense, darting his eyes between the judge and his wives. Robyn leaned slightly forward, her fingers twisting the edges of her folder, racing her mind. Christine sat upright, her jaw clenched, a storm simmering behind her eyes. Janelle rocked slightly on her heels, her face pale, struggling to steady her breath. Meri didn't move, her hands clasped tightly, trembling subtly beneath the table. Every heart in the room seemed synchronized with the invisible clock counting down to the next revelation. The judge speaks, her voice slicing the silence. We will now hear further testimony regarding personal interactions and the decisions made within the family that may have contributed to the issues brought before this court. The next witness takes the stand, a former close friend of the family. The eyes are guarded, darting to each wife and to Kody, but her voice is firm as she starts to speak. I observed tensions that seemed unresolvable, she says in a soft tone. Moments where decisions were made without the knowledge of certain spouses. For many years, I have kept silent, but it's time for the truth to be brought out. She recalls incidents of private confrontations, arguments behind closed doors, whispered exchanges in dimly lit hallways, and subtle manipulations that nobody outside the family could pick up on. The courtroom is leaning forward with every word as if starving for detail. Kody shifts slightly, his expression guarded, though small flickers of guilt cross his features. Robyn listens, her eyes wide. I thought I knew everything, she thinks. I never imagined it went this deep. Christine's fingers curl against the edge of her chair as memories well up behind her eyes. Nights of quiet suspicion, hushed conversations about money missing, subtle hints that something wasn't right. Every detail the witness recalls feels like confirmation of all those worst fears. Her face hardens, the tension radiating from her like fire. The witness pauses, takes a deep breath, then lets loose a bombshell. I also saw emails suggesting that some decisions, such as financial and personal, were made between Kody and one wife without the knowledge of the others. These decisions affected everyone in the household. Gasps ripple through the room. The wives exchange sharp, questioning glances. Robyn's hands tremble slightly. Janelle's stomach twists, and Meri bites her lip to stop a quiver of emotion. Christine leans forward, eyes blazing, her voice almost breaking in a whisper to herself. How long did this go on? The prosecutor pounces on that moment, and his voice is sharp and deliberate. Can you confirm that these actions were intentionally hidden? Yes, says the witness, whose voice is steady by now. It was deliberate. The secrecy was carefully maintained. The room seems to tighten, the weight of the revelations weighing down on every heart. Kody stands, attempting to defend himself. Your Honor, these events are being misconstrued. Christine interrupts, her voice cutting through the tension. No more excuses. The lies have been going on for years. I want to hear the truth for once. Tears well in Robyn's eyes, but she blinks fast, fighting to remain composed. How could love and trust be intertwined with so many secrets, she wonders. The burden of loyalty against the raw sting of betrayal makes Janelle fidget uncomfortably. Meri exhales slowly, trying to center herself, but the air feels suffocating. The judge raises a hand, and order is restored. Let the witness continue, she says in an even but commanding tone. He describes private conversations, where the psychological manipulation and subtle coercion are evident. A wife quietly coerced into nodding her head in agreement. Another wife excluded from important family decisions. A husband torn between love and secrecy. All rise bit by bit from careful, deliberate testimony. With each blow, it lands on hearts and minds. The camera pans across the wives' faces, capturing the flicker of shock, anger, and despair. Without warning, the witness pulls out a folder marked "Confidential Correspondence" and hands it to the prosecutor. Messages inside indicate one of the wives may have collaborated with persons outside of the family. Attorneys, financial advisors, even friends, without previous disclosure, directly threatening Kody's case for defense against this prosecution and the cohesion of the family unit as a whole. The courtroom reacts in a split second. Robyn gasps softly, unable to conceal her astonishment. Christine's face sets into stone, her lips pressed together, as her mind races through all the subtle betrayals she has endured. Janelle swallows hard, disbelief etched in every line of the face. Meri's eyes glisten, her hands trembling as the depth of deceit becomes clear. Kody leaps to his feet, trying to explain, "Your Honor, this correspondence, these actions were not what they appear. There is context. Context will be considered," the judge says firmly. "But the evidence has to be weighed. We will look at the intent of every action." Their wives are frozen in silent contemplation. Each wonders who to trust, whose word carries weight, and which secrets remain hidden. The witness continues, going through times when subtle coercion, emotional pressure, and whispered encouragement led to decisions affecting the whole family. Robyn leans forward, her eyes fixed intently on Kody. Why did he let that happen? Her heart races in her chest. Christine stares, anger welling up only just below the surface. Janelle rocks slightly, anxious and disturbed. Meri quietly wipes a tear, trying not to show her emotion. The court is a crucible, testing the bonds of trust and love, and every revelation threatens to shatter what remains. The prosecution now turns the spotlight, articulating how Kody's statements contradict the evidence on record. Every discrepancy cuts through their family, like a knife twisted in its fabric. Every explanation Kody tries to give crumbles under the weight of scrutiny. Christine leans back in her chair, her eyes narrow as she scrutinizes his every movement for any sign of deception. Robyn's lips purse into a thin-lipped silence as she takes in every word. Janelle's hands shake slightly, small but noticeably indicative of inner turmoil. Meri stares straight ahead, silent, but every muscle in her body is tense with anticipation. It's a dramatic shift. The witness testifies that one wife confided in them, that she felt alone and scared, and didn't trust Kody to view all his relationships equally, and had told him as much. The courtroom responds immediately. The tension escalates, with the wives exchanging nervous stares. Robyn's chest tightens, Christine's face is flush with anger, Janelle's eyes widen in shock, and Meri's lips quiver, holding words she can't quite let out. The judge signals for a short recess to let the storm of revelations sink in across the courtroom. Kody sits slowly down, running a hand through his hair, exhausted but alert. Robyn steps into the hallway, leaning against a cold wall, trying to steady her racing heart. Janelle paces back and forth, trying to wrap her mind around what was said. Christine stands rigid, arms across her chest, her eyes scanning the room watchfully. Meri leans against a pillar, silent, letting the weight press down. The tension is palpable, even as the gavel echoes through, signaling a temporary pause. They all know it. The next session can only escalate further, exposing emotions, allegiances, and betrayals that could redefine this family forever. It's like a pressure cooker in here. Thick, heavy air, every eye fastened on the center of the room. Kody Brown sits ramrod straight at the defendant's table, a forced calm masking the storm within. Robyn is leaning forward, knuckles white as she clutches her folder, her heart racing. Christine's jaw is tight, her eyes cold and unyielding, scanning every movement. Janelle rocks slightly on her heels, her stomach churning with unease. Meri sits stiffly, hands clasped, fingers trembling, as if the very walls are pressing in on her. The judge addresses the room, her eyes sharp and commanding. We shall now proceed with hearing more evidence relative to the interrelationships in this family and actions that have been covered under a cloak of secrecy or misrepresentation. Her voice cuts through silence, and everybody leans forward. The next witness is a longtime family confidant who has often been a witness to the Browns' private interactions over the years. She makes her way carefully to the stand, eyes flicking nervously to the wives and Kody, her voice steady as she begins. I have witnessed actions and decisions that were intentionally kept hidden from some members of this family, she says. These secrets were not just small omissions. They shaped the dynamics and influenced trust in profound ways. She speaks of private meetings, hushed conversations, and the subtle manipulations Kody and one of the wives enacted. Family financial decisions, personal relationships, and household management were determined behind closed doors, without anyone fully understanding what was happening. Each detail she reveals drops like a hammer in the courtroom. Kody shifts uncomfortably, and then a flicker of guilt crosses his face. Robyn's eyes widen in disbelief and betrayal. I never imagined it went this far, she thinks, her hand growing tighter on the folder. Christine furrows her brow, her fingers digging into her chair. In a flash, pictures run through her mind, whispered arguments, unexplained absences, small but significant betrayals she had quietly endured. Each revelation confirms her suspicions. Janelle rocks from side to side, unease etched in every line of her face. Meri fights back tears, biting her lips as the depth of deceit sinks in. The prosecutor leans forward, his voice sharp and deliberate. Can you confirm that these actions were intentional and designed to exclude some family members? The witness answers, his voice unshaken. Yes, the secrecy was deliberate and maintained over time. The room ripples with gasps. The wives exchange tense looks. Robyn's throat constricts, and a single tear slips down her cheek. Fire blazes in Christine's eyes. Janelle swallows hard, trying to steady herself. Meri's hands begin shaking. The courtroom is electric, each heartbeat magnified, each second laden with suspense. Suddenly, the witness reveals an even more explosive detail. One wife had actively collaborated with external parties, attorneys, financial advisors, even friends, without informing the others, potentially undermining Kody's position and the family's cohesion. The room reacts instantly. Robyn gasps softly, eyes wide in shock. Christine's face hardens, rage simmering just below the surface. Janelle's stomach knots. Meri's lips quiver as the weight of deceit sinks in. Kody stands up suddenly, trying to explain. Your Honor, these actions, These communications are being taken out of context. There is context. That context will be considered, the judge says evenly. But every document, every email, and every testimony will be weighed carefully. The wives sit in tense silence, processing the unfolding drama. Suspicion hangs in the air like a dense fog. Robyn's mind races. Why would any person do this? Who is manipulating whom? Christine's hands clench the edge of the table. Janelle fidgets, eyes darting to every subtle expression, trying to read hidden truths. Meri stares straight ahead, barely breathing, holding herself together. The witness continues, describing conversations where subtle coercion, emotional manipulation, and strategic silence shaped decisions across the family. The camera pans across the wives' faces, capturing every flicker of anger, disbelief, and sorrow. A well of tears rises in Robyn's eyes. Christine's face is stone, her jaw clenched. Janelle bites her lip, quivering. Meri swallows hard, her hands clenching in her lap. The courtroom is a stage of raw emotion. More evidence is produced by the prosecutor. Text messages, private emails, and notes showing attempts to hide communications and influence decisions. Each piece falls like a hammer blow. Kody's attempts at defense fall flat, as every word is weighted with the overwhelming evidence. Christine suddenly rises, pointing at Kody. How could you let this happen? How could you let secrets fester while pretending all was well? Her voice trembles with anger and hurt. Robyn's hand flies to her mouth, stifling a sob. Janelle rocks back and forth slightly, trying to absorb the shock. Meri squeezes her hands together and takes shallow breaths, fighting the urge to erupt emotionally. The judge calls for order, but the damage is already done. Tension crackles like static electricity in the room. Whispers ripple through the audience. Every eye is glued to the unfolding drama. Cameras click, recording each expression, each tremor of emotion. Kody's face tightens, his usual composure failing under the weight of accumulated evidence and emotional scrutiny. Specific incidents of breached confidence, changing alliances, and hidden agendas affecting even major family decisions make the session increasingly more heated. Every word spoken strikes the wives' hearts like a physical blow. Robyn now cries unabashedly, her emotions raw and hanging out in the open. Christine's anger is almost palpable, shaking with restrained rage. Janelle's anxiety manifests in restless movements, her eyes wide. Meri closes her eyes briefly, steadying herself to try to absorb the pain without breaking. The judge signals a brief recess, but the impact of the testimony lingers. Everyone knows the next phase will escalate further. The Brown family's secrets are being exposed layer by layer, and each revelation threatens to permanently alter the fragile dynamics that have kept them together. Outside, the sun shines brightly, almost mockingly serene. Inside, hearts are racing, breaths are caught, and minds reeling with betrayal. Robyn leans against the wall, attempting to gain her balance. Janelle paces, biting her lip. Christine stands firm, eyes ablaze with anger. Meri quietly wipes a tear away, her body tense. Kody sits, shoulders slumped, feeling the weight of years of hidden truths weigh down on him. The room is abuzz with anticipation as the gavel echoes through the room, indicating recess. Reporters furiously scribble. Whispers ripple across the audience, and each wife processes the revelation in her own way. Alliances have shifted, suspicions have solidified, and emotions have been laid bare. No one in the Brown family will leave this courtroom unchanged. And at the start of this next session, the stakes are higher. Emotions are raw. and truths more explosive than ever before. Even in the silence, the tension hangs in the air like smoke. Every look, every quiet gesture, every word seems to speak of betrayal and broken hearts. Kody's control is fragile. Robyn's tears slide down her cheeks, unstoppable. Christine's anger boils, ready to unleash itself. Janelle's anxiety quivers, just beneath the surface, a constant tremble. Meri steels herself for what's still to come, knowing that nothing will ever be the same. The courtroom seems heavier than ever, almost suffocating with tension. Everyone in the room seems to know this is the moment of truth that decides it all. The truths, the betrayals, and the fragile bonds holding the Brown family together. Kody Brown sits at the descendants' table, his hands clenched into fists, his jaw tight. He has fought to maintain composure, but the weight of revelations from previous sessions presses down like a storm, ready to break. Robyn leans forward, her heart racing, eyes darting to Kody. Her mind whirls with confusion and hurt. How much longer can this family survive this trial? Christine sits up straight, shoulders squared, eyes sharp and focused, burning with a combination of fury and determination. Janelle rocks slightly, her stomach knotted, every muscle tense. Meri's face is pale, lips pressed together, trembling just slightly, as if bracing herself for impact. The judge clears her throat as preparation for the final testimony. "We will now hear the conclusive evidence," she says, and her voice cuts through tension like a blade. All parties are instructed to pay close attention to the facts as presented. A hush befalls the room. The last witness rises, a one-time family helper who has been privy to years of private interactions. She holds a folder, thick with documents, letters, and photographs. Her hands shake slightly as she places them on the stand, but her voice is steady. "What I am about to reveal is the culmination of years of hidden actions, concealed truths, and divided loyalties," she says. The witness starts to explain the events that have been whispered, but never fully exposed. She speaks of secret alliances, hidden emails, and private discussions, excluding some family members from major decisions. Each detail she releases sounds like a physical blow, landing squarely on each wife and Kody. Robyn's eyes widen, her throat tightens, struggling to swallow the lump building in her chest. Christine's jaw sets, and a sharp intake of breath betrays the storm raging inside her. Janelle fidgets, unease etched into every movement. Meri grits the edge of her chair, her knuckles white, as she silently prays for composure. Then the bombshell drops. The witness reveals documents that prove one wife had secretly collaborated with outside advisors, lawyers, financial consultants, and even family friends behind the other's backs. These actions were done in a manner that might have turned the family dynamics around, manipulated Kody's decisions, and perhaps could have even undercut trust altogether. The courtroom reacts instantaneously. Gasps echo through the chamber, and the wives' faces betray shock, anger, and heartbreak all at once. Kody stands, his voice shaking slightly. "Your Honor, these claims are misleading. They lack full context." Christine interrupts sharply, eyes ablaze. "Context? You dare speak to me about context after years of deception? This family needs the truth." Robyn's lips quiver, her voice barely above a whisper. "How could anyone do this to us?" Tears well up in her eyes and spill over, despite her best efforts to hold them inside. Janelle merely sways slightly, wordlessly repeating every private conversation she has held, trying to make sense of it against the evidence now before her. Meri closes her eyes for a quick, short breath, preparing herself for the emotional barrage that is yet to come. The witness proceeds, introducing pictures, emails, and letters, confirming hidden manipulations. Text messages show conversations that excluded wives from knowing key family decisions on purpose. The photos illustrate private confrontations that had been kept secret. Letters hint at striving for an outcome without being transparent about it. The evidence is overwhelming. The judge leans forward and reviews each document carefully. It is clear that there have been several instances of actions being concealed and family dynamics affected as a result, she says. We will consider the intent, the impact, and the consequences carefully in determining any next steps. Robyn leans in, closer to Kody, her eyes searching his, wordlessly asking a question to which she may never know the answer. Christine's lips set in a thin line, her face a mask of resolve and anger. Janelle bites her lip, quivering. Meri's hands are clasped tightly together, knuckles white, bracing herself for the storm. Then comes a quiet moment, the tension so thick it feels almost tangible. Kody exhales slowly, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his features for the first time. I never wanted to hurt any of you, he says, voice barely above a whisper. Every decision I made was for what I thought was best. Robyn's eyes well up with tears, and she shakes her head. Best for you, maybe, but not for us. Christine's gaze hardens, cold and unforgiving. Janelle's eyes glisten with unshed tears, while Meri's lips quiver, trying to speak. It is as if the courtroom has stopped time, every heart bound by raw emotional weight. The judge proceeds to point out each evidence and summarizes the testimony. Tense moments of silence pass as the wives listen to the depth of betrayal that has been revealed through these sessions. Alliances have broken, trust fractured, and emotions have reached high pitch. Every look exchanged between Kody and his wives speaks volumes. Questions of loyalty, love, and accountability hang unspoken but heavily in the air. The final documents, a package of emails and letters that confirm the previous revelations, solidifying the extent of secret collaboration and concealed decisions, are sent in by the court clerk. The air is electric. Robyn leans back, a deep breath escaping her lips. Anger flashes across Christine's face. Janelle rocks slightly, hugging herself. Meri squeezes her hands together, wordlessly processing these final blows to security and trust. Kody keeps himself seated, hands clasped tight, eyes downcast. For a moment, the man who seemed untouchable in his position of authority appears vulnerable as he faces not only the scrutiny of the court, but also the emotional aftermath of his actions. The judge speaks again to the courtroom for the last time. This session has unraveled a complex web of deception, secrecy, and fractured trust. The court will deliberate carefully. However, it is clear that relationships have been tested beyond measure, and now the family will have to face the consequences of both actions and inactions. The gavel strikes. The courtroom exhales, the tension momentarily dissipating, though the weight of revelations lingers like smoke. Cameras flash, capturing every expression. Reporters murmur, scribbling furiously in their notebooks. The wives all remain seated amid the emotional gravity of the moment, Robyn wiping a tear from her cheek. Christine's lips press together, her jaw tight. Janelle takes a shaky breath, and Meri silently clasps her hands, trying to center herself amidst chaos. The session ends with another dramatic twist, the appearance of an email that had not been presented, indicating more possibly secret decisions to come. This leaves everyone shaken, including Kody. The courtroom cleared out very slowly, but the emotional fallout was far from over. CTA, what would you do if you were in their shoes? Could trust survive such secrets? Comment below and share your thoughts. We want to hear from you. Outside the courtroom, sunlight glints off marble floors. It is as though the world were calm and normal outside those doors. Inside, however, there's an emotional storm, betrayal, uncertainty still lingering. The harshest scrutiny the Brown family could have imagined. Secrets revealed, alliances tested, and hearts broken. This session is over, but the effects of what has finally surfaced will continue to ripple their lives long after the cameras stop rolling. The wives exchanged one last, lingering glance. Each knew that the story was far from over. The next chapter in their lives was yet unwritten, and every choice from this day forward would be colored by the revelations that changed everything. Kody sat in quiet reflection upon his choices that had brought them to this place. As the courtroom doors closed behind him, the emotional storm he and his wives had weathered would not so easily dissipate. The camera pans over this empty courtroom one last time. The gavel lies still. Papers are scattered across tables. And there is silence. The battle might be over for the Brown family, but the ripple effects of betrayal, secrets, and fractured trust will echo far beyond these walls.